In this episode, we're talking all about the Darksaber, ancient Mandalorian history, and where I think the Filoniverse is headed with all these crazy Mandalorians. Hey guys, welcome back to Star Wars Canon. Today we're going to be digging into the 5th episode of the book of Boba Fett, and it's easily the best one so far. The episode starts off strong as Mando's hunting down a Klatooinian bounty. He gets into it with the bounty's bodyguards, but they don't stand a chance against a Darksaber-wielding Mando covered in Beskar. This fight scene was fantastic and really showed the damage a lightsaber can do. I mean, he freaking cuts the bounty in half and then chops off his head. I wish we would have seen Boba doing a little more ruthless fighting like this, but granted he doesn't have a Darksaber. I really appreciate how Mando's having a hard time wielding and controlling the Darksaber. The prequels, Clone Wars, and Rebels make it clear that a lightsaber isn't easy to use, despite what the sequels will tell you. Perhaps the best example of this is in Rebels, when Kanan's teaching Sabine how to use a lightsaber. Sabine is plenty proficient in both ranged and melee combat, but she really struggles to use the Darksaber. Kanan explains that when using a lightsaber, the Kyber crystal is attuned to the wielder's thoughts and emotions, and these become part of the blade. Sabine continues to struggle with the Darksaber until she confronts her traumatic past. At that point, she notices that the blade feels lighter, and she doesn't have to fight against it. Mando's thoughts and emotions are clearly not at peace the way they need to be for the Darksaber to become a part of him. This may be due to his traumatic childhood, but I think it probably has more to do with Grogu going off to train with Luke. He clearly misses the little guy, and we see that throughout the episode. Regardless, I've always liked that the lightsabers are force sensitive, and so it takes someone who can use the force, or at least be at peace with it, to use a lightsaber proficiently. After killing the Klatooinian bounty, Mando learns where the remnant of the Navarro covert is. They're hiding on Kolzak Alley on the Glavis Ringworld. Ringworld is a giant space station which encircles a small star. This is an awesome idea, a space station that's big enough that it actually encircles an entire tiny star, and the CGI here is movie grade. Awesome. Mando finds the armorer as well as Paz Vizla. That's the big guy who helped save him and Grogu back on Navarro. Paz Vizla is clearly stunned when Mando breaks out the Darksaber. This is because Pre-Vizsla was the last member of his clan to wield the Darksaber, and it was because of his actions that Maul conquered and ruled Mandalore before Ahsoka defeated him in a duel. It was also another of his ancestors, Tar Vizsla, who was the first Mandalorian Jedi and the original creator of the Darksaber. So, obviously Paz feels a strong connection to the blade. I'm pretty sure he wants to atone for the mistakes of Pre-Vizsla and continue the legacy of Tar Vizsla. On a cool little side note, Jon Favreau voices Paz Vizla, and he was also the voice of Pre-Vizsla in the Clone Wars. That was actually how he and Dave Filoni started working together, and thank heavens for that. When Paz asks Mando if he won the Darksaber in combat, the armorer quotes an ancient Mandalorian prophecy that states that if the Darksaber is acquired unworthily, in other words, by any means other than combat, it will be a curse to the nation. This will be important in a minute when the armorer recounts the tale of Bo-Katan. We learn that the Darksaber is actually made of Beskar, though it's a quality that Mando has never seen before. That's gotta be handy when a Sith tries to cut your lightsaber in half and his blade just bounces right off. This is actually a bit paradoxical though, because when the armorer sees the Beskar spear, she tells Mando, Mandalorian steel is meant for armor, not weapons. I guess the Darksaber and whistling birds are exceptions. When asking Mando if he killed Moff Gideon, Paz says, death would have been justice for his atrocities, to which the armorer adds, the blood of millions of our kind is on his hands. Apparently Moff Gideon himself is responsible for the Mandalorian Purge and the Night of 1,000 Tears. Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau still haven't actually shown us how the whole thing went down, but I'm pretty sure they will in upcoming seasons of The Mandalorian and or The Book of Boba Fett. Mando asks if the armorer has heard of Bo-Katan Kryze. She states that Bo-Katan is a cautionary tale. She once laid claim to rule Mandalore based purely on blood and possession of the Darksaber. Bo-Katan Kryze was the sister of Duchess Satine Kryze, who ruled Mandalore up until her death at the hands of Maul after he and Pre-Vizsla conquered the world with the help of the Shadow Collective. Even though her sister ruled Mandalore, Bo-Katan disagreed with her sister's pacifist ways, believing that they were a betrayal of Mandalore's warrior heritage. Bo-Katan was a member of Death Watch, and actually assisted Pre-Vizsla and Maul in their takeover of Mandalore. It wasn't until Maul killed Pre-Vizsla in ritual combat and assumed the Mandalorian throne that Bo-Katan realized they had gone too far. She and several other members of Death Watch broke off from the rest at this point and fled. With the help of Ahsoka and the 332nd Division, Bo-Katan, the Night Owls, and other members of the Mandalorian Resistance were finally able to free the planet from Maul's rule, though the victory was short-lived as the occupying clone troopers never left Mandalore when they transitioned into Imperial stormtroopers following Order 66. Over 15 years later, Maul escaped Malachor and the Inquisitors with the help of Ezra Bridger. He returned to Dathomir and gathered resources, including the Darksaber, while he tried to discover the whereabouts of Kenobi. Sabine Wren recovered the Darksaber from Dathomir after Ezra used it to defeat the spirits of the Night Sisters. Later, Sabine and the rest of Phoenix Squadron fought alongside several clans of Mandalorians in an attempt to free Mandalore from the grip of the Empire. After several small victories, including the destruction of a Star Destroyer, Bo-Katan said that the Empire would send everything it had to crush Mandalore. Realizing that she was needed more by the rebels than the Mandalorians, Sabine gifted the Darksaber to Bo-Katan, realizing she was the leader the Mandalorians needed. And that's the last thing we saw before the Mandalorian started, and we learned that Moff Gideon had been instrumental in orchestrating the Great Purge in the Night of 1,000 Tears. We get a brief glimpse of that night in this episode, where we see the Empire bringing overwhelming force to bear in the form of thousands of TIE bombers. Mandalore and all its people were bombed into oblivion. The armor tells Mando that the tribe, aka the Covert, which was a subset of a larger group known as the Children of the Watch, only survived because they were cloistered on Concordia, one of Mandalore's moons, during the Purge. Interestingly, Concordia is actually where Death Watch was headquartered before they teamed up with Maul and launched their assault on Mandalore itself. In the French version of The Mandalorian, the Children of the Watch are called Les Héritiers de la Death Watch, which literally translates to the heirs of Death Watch. This explains why they were on Concordia during the time of the Purge. They were loyal to Death Watch, which had been overthrown by Bo-Katan and Ahsoka at the time of the Battle of Mandalore. Ironically, losing to Bo-Katan and the Republic is actually what saved the remnants of Death Watch, who would later rebrand themselves as the Children of the Watch. These Mandalorians blamed the destruction of Mandalore on Bo-Katan, as well as Duchess Satine's pacifist ideology. In a stark overcorrection, they espoused the Way of the Mandalore, which was a staunch Orthodox religion that had fallen into near obscurity at the time of the Clone Wars. This is why Bo-Katan displayed such animosity toward Mando when she first met him and he wouldn't remove his helmet. She recognized him as a member of the radical religious offshoot which she had deserted and fought against for 15 years. You may be wondering why I'm calling the Children of the Watch a religious group. I'm calling them that because that's what Mando himself calls them. Twice he's said, "Weapons are a part of my religion." Now, that may just be an embellishment or even a bit of a joke, but the armor takes it several steps further. She already said that the tribe was cloistered on Concordia during the Purge. The word cloister refers to a place of seclusion, often within a monastery or convent, which is restricted to members of a certain faith. Additionally, she says, only those that walked the way escaped the curse prophesied in the Creed. This is the prophecy she mentioned earlier when she said that if the Darksaber was acquired unworthily, in other words, not through ritual combat, it would be a curse to the nation. She was speaking of Bo-Katan and how she was gifted the saber by Sabine Wren. She never won it in combat. This is why Bo-Katan was so upset at the end of Season 2 of The Mandalorian. She wanted to kill Moff Gideon and claim the Darksaber the right way, the way that would have validated her rule in the eyes of all Mandalorians. So, we've got Mando calling the Way of the Mandalore religion, as well as the armor talking about monasteries, ancient prophecies, and curses. At this point, the armor mentions one final prophecy. The songs of eons past foretold of the mythosaur rising up to herald a new age of Mandalore. Sadly, it only exists in legend. And this is where we bring this entire discussion of Mandalorian history full circle. The actual mythosaurs were hunted to extinction under the leadership of Mandalore I in the Old Republic, 10,000 years before the Battle of Yavin. However, the mythosaur is the signet of Boba Fett. A lot of people loved this episode, but said that it stole too much screen time from Boba Fett and his eponymous show. I completely disagree. This episode is bringing together and clarifying the history of Mandalore all the way from Paz Vizla 1,000 years before the fall of the Republic up until 9 years after the Battle of Yavin. I think this prophecy predicts that Boba Fett, called the Mythosaur in the prophecy, will rise up and herald a new age of Mandalore. This makes perfect sense for so many reasons. Mandalore as it existed for thousands of years has been destroyed. Boba Fett's signet is the Mythosaur, and he's just completed a redemption arc from bounty hunter to benevolent daimyo. He's learned the significance and the value of having a tribe, family, or, as the Mandalorians call it, a clan. At the end of the Book of Boba Fett, he's perfectly situated to start bringing together all the pieces of the puzzle. Mando has the Darksaber and trusts Boba after he helped save Grogu. Even Bo-Katan has learned to trust him after they worked together. She may still be the leader of the Night Owls, but she can't rule Mandalore again, not after helping Maul to conquer the planet and then failing to lead the Mandalorians to freedom against the Empire. Boba, on the other hand, could, and the most poetic part is that he's the son of a foundling. One other minor detail that could lend credibility to this theory, or it could just be a throwaway Easter egg for the fans, is that the writing on Boba's throne is comprised of Sith runes. The written language of the ancient Sith is called Ur-Kittat, aka the Old Tongue. On Boba's throne, these runes spell out Boba Fett. Well, almost anyway. The letters F and E are wrong, and they don't match any other letter in the Sith language. I've dug around online and no one seems to know why these two letters are messed up, while all the others clearly spell out Boba Fett. Regardless, for some reason, Bib Fortuna had a throne that had Sith runes on it which spelled out Boba Fett. Who knows, maybe there's some ancient Sith prophecy regarding Boba Fett and the Mandalorians. If not, why the heck did Bib Fortuna have a throne covered in Sith runes spelling out Boba Fett? This episode brought together all of the canon lore regarding the Mandalorians, and I think Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are building us towards something absolutely epic, namely the gathering and reestablishment of Mandalore under the leadership of Boba Fett, Bo-Katan, and Mando. Man, I may need to cut all of that into its own little video because that was a lot. Moving on with the episode, the armorer begins training Mando in the use of the Darksaber, where we again see that he's struggling to wield it, as if it's really heavy. The armorer's got a great line here when she says, "You cannot control it with your strength. Persistence without insight will lead to the same outcome." I'm sure we can all relate to that. Paz challenges Mando to duel for the Darksaber, and he's actually winning up until he wrestles the Darksaber away from Mando and tries to use it himself. At this point, Mando pulls a vibroblade and pretty quickly beats Paz. The armorer calls a stop to the fight before anyone gets seriously hurt, but then she just randomly asks both Paz and Mando if they've ever removed their helmets. This question felt like it came out of the blue, but it's what sends Mando packing and off to Tatooine. We get more religious allegory here when Paz says, "Leave, apostate." The rest of the episode is definitely on the lighter side. Mando gets the shakedown from the Star Tours TSA, again saying the weapons are a part of his religion. We see a BD unit in Pelimoto's garage in Mos Eisley. If you haven't played Jedi Fallen Order, Cal Kestis had a BD unit who helped him on his adventure. Also, go play the game, it's fantastic. Pelimoto, the mechanic from The Mandalorian, says that she once dated a Jawa and they're furry. She even gets asked out by one of the Jawas in the shop, but responds, "Oh, that's okay. I'm working on me right now. Just go find the parts." We see a long silver tube, just like the one Han Solo used to try to prop open the trash compactor on the Death Star, and we learn that it's a cryogenic density combustion booster. Apparently the Jawas got it from the underside of a Pike Spice Runner, which I can only assume is the one that Boba and the Tuskens trashed a few episodes ago. Mando gets his new N1 Starfighter in a Star Wars edition of Pimp My Ride. Then he takes it for a spin in Beggar's Canyon, which is complete with Womp Rat and all. This isn't only a callback to Luke's reference to the place in Episode 4, but is also where young Anakin smashed onto the service ramp during the Boonta Eve Classic pod race in Episode 1. You can still see the broken pieces of the gate laying around. And finally, when Mando returns to Pelly's garage and she asks him how it was, he says it was wizard, which is a callback to Kitster, who also used this term in Episode 1. Finally, Fennec shows up to recruit Mando to help her and Boba push the Pikes out of Mos Espa. And that's it. Bryce Dallas Howard absolutely nailed this episode. The deep lore, the Easter eggs, the action scenes, everything was on point. This episode really stands head and shoulders above the prior episodes, except for maybe Episode 2, which has Boba's Force vision and transformation. Anyway, I hope you guys like this deep dive. If you do enjoy these in-depth episode reviews, let me know in the comments. Leave a like, hit the subscribe button, and there will be many more of these episodes to come. And I can't tell you guys how excited I am to do reviews like this for the Kenobi series. There are a lot of late nights in my future. Thanks for watching, guys, and may the Force be with you.